Well, friends, good evening. It is good to see and have all of you here this night. And if I have not had the privilege of meeting you personally, my name is Pete Moon, pastor here at Reveille United Methodist Church. And on behalf of our entire congregation, we want to welcome all of you to this place this night as we have a conversation together about gun violence in our community and how you and I together may be a means of reducing it. I want to offer a word in advance of thanks to all these folks who are up here on our panel. You'll have a chance to meet them here in a little bit, and also to Eric Phillips from Channel 8, who is with us here tonight. But it's also important you know that this night is the vision and the product of a team in our church who care very deeply about this issue. You know, every Monday, this team gathers at a bell that is outside our sanctuary, and they ring the bell one time for every victim of gun violence in our community. And they have done that consistently and reverently and prayerfully, but they wanted to take that to the next level. And this night is the vision of their hard work and their prayers and their work, and we are thankful for all of them and their desire to do even more. They have organized this night together for us. And I would also like to say that I think it's fair to say on their behalf and on behalf of our entire congregation that we find it fitting to gather together in a sanctuary this night to have this conversation because we are a people in this place who are centered upon Jesus. And with that vision, we see every person in this community who is killed by gun violence not simply as a legislative issue or political issue, as important as that is, but we see these folks as children of God, loved and esteemed. And not only that, we are reminded in this place consistently that Jesus calls you and I to be peacemakers. And we may not all be placed in places of influence, as are several folks on our panel today. Well, we do have the opportunity to do what we do here tonight. Get together and speak with one another about ways that you and I can move forward so that this community and the city which we love can look more and more like the kingdom of God. And so we welcome you this night, and as we begin our time together, I would also like to offer a word of prayer. Let's pray together. Almighty God, we thank you for this gathering. We thank you for the gift of those who are up here on this altar, who have given of their time and their passion, and it is our prayer this night that we can listen and speak well, that we can keep your children always before us throughout the conversation. By your grace, let there be healing in this city in which we love. For this we ask through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. And friends, as we begin our time together, I would also like to offer a word of thanks to our Attorney General for the Commonwealth, Jay Jones, who is here and graciously offered to join us to give us a brief word about the work of our state and legislative bodies around this issue. Attorney General Jones, we welcome you.
Thank you. Well, good evening, and thank you all for the opportunity to be with you tonight and for convening this gathering on such an important issue. As you all know, gun violence is an issue that affects communities across this entire Commonwealth. Guns are the #1 killer of children in the Commonwealth and in our nation. They are also a key driver in suicide deaths. In order to keep our communities safe, we must address gun violence head-on. With common sense and reasonable regulations, with education about the dangers of firearms, and with community-driven strategies that we know that work, we can succeed. One of the reasons that I'm particularly excited to be here with you tonight is because the faith community plays such an important role in this work, and it's heartening to see each and every one of you gathered here tonight to use your voices to keep our community safe. As Attorney General, keeping our community safe is my top priority. And my team, some of whom are here tonight, are hard at work to build out our programs and our division to support this work. Our vision is to embed violence prevention professionals directly within our communities. Our role is not just to prosecute cases, it's to engage. We are building relationships, identifying root causes, and promoting restorative practices in the neighborhoods experiencing the highest rates of violence here in Virginia. We are positioning our team to facilitate real strategy coordination. We want the link between community-led strategies and the broader legal framework. The role of community members in preventing gun violence is critical. We are moving away from a top-down approach. Our partnership means the community has a seat at the head of the table from day one. And we also recognize that our office should not be the face of the intervention. When a conflict is identified, we should empower local violence prevention professionals and credible messengers like yourselves to step in first. Instead of defaulting to the court system for every single dispute, we are supporting community-led mediation that addresses the why behind the violence. We are asking neighborhoods what safety looks like to them. For some, that's more streetlights. For others, it's more youth programs. For others, it's high-level interruption. We align our resources based on those definitions, not just data. Our office is not here to police the community. We're here to partner with the community. We provide those resources, that data, and the legal framework, but the community provides the expertise and the relationships. Together, we are creating an ecosystem where everybody can thrive. And we can use our position to ensure that law enforcement and state agencies are actually listening to and acting on the feedback provided by community members. And we look forward to supporting the implementation of numerous life-saving bills passed by the General Assembly this year that go to Governor Spangenberger for her signature, one of which is safe storage. We know that safe storage is one of the most effective ways to reduce unintentional shootings, youth access, and suicide. Several bills have passed touching on these topics, and the faith community can play an important role in spreading that word. We also support the banning of ghost guns. The rise of ghost guns creates real challenges for law enforcement and public safety. Closing these regulatory gaps ensure that these weapons are treated with the same level of accountability as traditionally manufactured weapons. We're also promoting industry accountability. We're working hard with our legislators to put systems in place that hold bad industry actors accountable while encouraging responsible practices. It's exactly what I did as an assistant attorney general in Washington, D.C., and it's what we're going to do here in Virginia. We support increasing domestic violence protections. Domestic violence situations involving firearms are lethal, and we must keep firearms out of the hands of domestic abusers. And we also want to ban firearms in hospitals and mental health facilities. These laws will keep people safe in healthcare settings, and that seems like common sense to me. And finally and lastly, the assault weapons ban that is headed to Governor Spangenberger's desk has the full support of this Attorney General's office. And in addition to supporting the implementation, my office looks forward to defending those laws vigorously in court. I want to thank you all again for being here. I want to thank you for your investment in your communities. I want to thank you for using your voices to make change. Only that is what will change Virginia and make us a safer place. I look forward to working with each and every one of you. I thank the panelists for your words that you will offer tonight, and I look forward to seeing you all very, very soon. Thank you again to Reveille for hosting. May God bless all of you. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Eric Phillips, and I am evening anchor at WRIC TV, Channel 8. And I want to begin tonight by saying that all of you have an excuse for just one night. Because if you were not here right now, all of you, I'm sure, would be watching 8 News at 6. But since you are here, you have an excuse for just one night. But I will see you back there tomorrow night. Thank you for coming tonight. We are looking forward to a spirited conversation, one in which we will learn and one in which we will leave inspired. How we want to begin, though, is by allowing each one of the panelists to introduce themselves. You may say what you'd like to say about yourself, and we'll begin with Mr. Greg Hopkins.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Greg Hopkins. I'm the director of the City of Richmond Office of Gun Violence Prevention and the interim director of the City of Richmond Department of Justice Services. And I'm glad to be here tonight to share wisdom and also provide any information that's going to be useful to the panel as well as the audience today.
Jones. I'm a deputy chief with the Richmond Police Department. Right now, I am the OIC of Support Services, and thank you for inviting me.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jasen Cooper. I'm with Richmond Public Schools. I'm the Associate Director for Culture, Climate, and Student Services under the Wellness Department. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Marvin Gilliam, Jr. My dad would want me to make sure I say the junior. I serve as the pastor of the Mount Carmel Baptist Church located in the Churchill area of the city of Richmond, as well as co-president for Richmonders involved in strengthening our communities, also known as RISC.
I'm Haupert-Johnson. I'm the resident bishop of the United Methodist Church in Virginia, and I shepherd the 830 United Methodist churches throughout the Commonwealth. I was first career attorney, so I've explored that arena as well, but I'm delighted to be here, and I'm grateful to Reveille for hosting us tonight.
And we are delighted to have all of the panelists here tonight for taking your time, and I'm sure that you'll be able to enlighten us with your insights. So let's dive right in, shall we? First question for the evening, and this is going to be posed to each one of you so you can answer them individually. Just last night, there were reports of multiple shots fired in the Highland Park area of Richmond. And just a week and a half to 2 weeks ago, we saw a deadly shooting in Shockoe Bottom. In the city of Petersburg, a 6-year-old died because of a shooting in an apartment complex there. Question to each one of you, what is the greatest challenge facing the city of Richmond and surrounding communities when it comes to reducing gun violence? Mr. Hopkins.
I think the biggest challenge that we see is that we have, I will say, substantial amount of weapons on our streets in the city of Richmond. The Attorney General just spoke about unsecured firearms at home with minors, and as well as people who leave guns within their cars when they're not secured. I know Deputy Chief's going to speak on that a little bit later about how many guns we did seize in the city of Richmond over the last year at Safe Summer. But our normal conversation when it comes to gun violence is that what drives violent crime in the city of Richmond, and we have assumptions sometimes that it may be this individual that's walking around with a hoodie, it may be the gangs over here, but what we notice is that, and this coming out of COVID, normal conversations that turn into disagreement now escalates to an argument that if an individual, and either me or you, one of us have a firearm in our possession, somebody's going to get shot or killed. And that is becoming a more common theme when we see individuals that, when RPD get to a scene and the facts comes out that it was something that was just an argument. And it's becoming more and more prevalent nowadays, not just in Richmond, but all over the Commonwealth. The second piece is that we also see individuals that are not able to resolve conflict, that are in some sort of some sort of relationship with another individual. Arguments is our leading cause of homicides here in the city of Richmond. Follow a little bit behind it is domestic violence. And those individuals that are in relationships that can't resolve conflict, we see them oftentimes when they come in for a protective order. There could be aggravated assault, and then it escalates to a point where they're coming back on their being charged with homicide, or they have committed suicide themselves. And then on the flip side, for our young folks, social media. Social media is is the biggest, I would say, clickbait that we see to drive attention and to drive also action for individuals who are not really responsible when it comes to thinking errors, how they process their thinking errors.
And cell phones in schools, I would probably add to that as well.
Oh, absolutely, but I'll leave it at RPS. I think they're doing a great job at monitoring that.
So I would say that our rights don't carry the same weight as our responsibility. The amount of weapons that are on the street, and Greg made a great point, how many guns we recovered. And I hate to say numbers because I will get the number wrong, but I feel like I could say hundreds. Hundreds of weapons were stolen out of the city because anyone can get a weapon. And if anyone can get a weapon, then anyone can be injured by a weapon. So I am a fan, and it's probably no surprise, of really more legislation that stops certain types of weapons being placed in our communities. There's no real reason why at 18 you should be able to buy a killing machine, a machine and a tool solely used to kill people. You have to question what we as a nation, as a community, really believe is more important. If our rights don't meet our responsibility, then we have to even the playing field and make sure that they do. So my response is really, we don't need this many weapons in the world, these certain types of weapons. They're unnecessary. When an argument or a fight starts and someone has a weapon, you're certainly going to pull out the weapon. And so now we went from a fist fight, really what Greg said, to a murder. And that is something you cannot take back. Once the bullet is sent into this world, it does what it's going to do. It's a tragedy. It's a horrible, horrible experience, not just for the family, but the people that are around. Speaking specifically about the Shockoe Bottom incident, there were people that came with that group that were trying to help their friends and their family that had been shot. So it's that side of it that I'm not sure everyone understands. And it's ripples. It doesn't stop. That family will be changed, and the shooter's family will be changed. So we need to take it more seriously, in my humble opinion.
Let me push back for just 1 second when it comes to, you alluded to the assault weapons ban, basically, that the Attorney General was talking about. Some will say that those types of legislative actions really penalize the folks who are going to follow the rules to begin with.
Mm-hmm. And I would say, if you really strongly feel that way, then let's continue to do it your way, since you want to have the weapon. Everyone gets to have the weapon, so let's continue down that path and see where it takes us. I know, looking at over 31 people shot this year, maybe it's not that serious to everyone in the room. Maybe the impact is not felt as seriously as everyone in the room. But if you are here, that means you care. And so you have to consider, again, there has to be rights, but there also has to be responsibility. If you cannot ensure that the person is going to be responsible, then you need to be restrictive of rights. And that's what the law is meant to do.
All right. Well, we talked about access, right? There's a lot of weapons out here that our youth as well as others are getting their hands on. The idea of social media. Social media drives a dopamine-driven feedback for a lot of our youth. So they get excited. They are more eager to get more likes. However, we're normalizing bad behavior, right? So when we're giving those likes, when we're seeing things that should not happen, we're giving validation to people when we should be actually giving them help. From the point of view of the schools, we are waiting too late to intervene. When you recognize that a lot of our youth are hurting, a lot of our youth are looking for help. They are screaming for help. So the idea of being able to intervene at an early age is very important in order to assist with the challenges facing us with the gun violence.
So grateful for the panelists that have spoke so far, because they really, every answer that I came up with, they've shared it already. And so that is to say that I do agree with what each person has shared. I do want to kind of raise the fact that a lot of these things are interconnected. So when we think about socioeconomic status, when we think about social media, we think about the mental health concerns that are within the context of our communities, we see all of these things kind of playing out in these moments, this escalation and not being able to manage conflict in a manner that's effective. I think as Mr. Hopkins was sharing, I had the scene from Friday flash in my head where Ice Cube's dad comes to him and says, man, don't take that gun out there. You use your fist. You gotta live to fight another day. And I think, in many ways that is a conflict mediation tactic that was used in that moment that we just don't see now. And so there has to be these, how we teach our young people, how we teach our young adults to manage conflict is a big part of the challenges that we see happening within the context of our communities, and that's something that is a community-wide thing. It is something that should happen in school, that has to be reinforced in community, that has to be reinforced through faith communities, where we can all collaborate together to help our young people be able to do that effectively.
Well, Marvin, you cleaned it up. I think what I would add is, if I summarize what I've heard, that gun violence is a symptom, but not the cause. And so if we're going to talk about the underlying issues, let's talk about why people don't feel safe. Let's talk about the vast disparity from have and have not, which leads me to want to have more and to threaten you to have more. Let's talk about mental health issues, because that's a huge part of gun violence. And let's talk about our culture fails right on to teach our children how to resolve conflict in ways that are healthy, in ways that are, and I think as a culture we've lost a vision of, and this is where my spiritual background comes in, but a vision of reconciliation, a vision of we all work together for the common good, a vision of we all take care of each other, and a vision that, as a mother, whenever I see victims of gun violence, I think that person has a mother and a family. So let's look at all of the causes and not just address this symptom, because there's so much brokenness that we have to address that we could get rid of guns, but people will find them as long as those underlying issues are not looked at carefully.
And along those lines, when you talk about looking at the symptoms and not just the responses, how important is it to have the faith community be at the forefront of that effort? And I'm looking at you, Bishop, and I'm looking at you, Pastor.
I think that the faith community, and what I appreciate about all scripture, all faith backgrounds, have a different vision of how the world should be. And I go to Micah 4 from our Judeo-Christian heritage, where it talks about the vision of God is that we beat swords into plowshares and spears into pruning forks, and we don't study war anymore. A vision of a table, a vision of a place where all nations and people sit together, a vision for a holy city and healthy streets, a vision of union and joy. And if we could have that vision and work toward it, but I think in our culture today that vision is disappearing. And the faith communities must speak out and say, as the Apostle Paul says, there is a more excellent way, and God desires so much more for us than carnage in our streets. And God's well aware of it. I mean, you think way back to Cain and Abel. This is not a new thing. We've been slaughtering each other since the beginning. But that God yearns for us to have so much more and will give us a spirit of peace and reconciliation and cooperation if we're just taught a better way from the beginning. And so I think it's incumbent on us to teach children a different vision and to cast that before all people.
A couple of words come to mind for me. Two of them are presence and proximity. I would endeavor to say that oftentimes in faith community, we aren't present enough, that we aren't showing up in spaces enough. And it makes me think of the ways even which I, as a pastor, need to show up more, to lead my faith, lead the community that I lead to show up more faithfully. And don't get me wrong, there are pastors that do it. Pastors sitting in this room, if I start calling names, I'll get in trouble. But I can look around the room now and see the individuals who I know are there when the family is dealing with the loss of a loved one due to gun violence. They show up. They're on the scene. They are present with those families. But that is also in my view, it's important to be there in those moments. But we have to think about how we show up proactively, to partner with, to support, both with time and with financial resource, those who are already there doing the work. There are a lot of great organizations that are doing the work already on the ground. And so as a faith community, it's like, how do we give our time to partner with organizations that are showing up, that are mentoring young people? How do we offer our buildings, our spaces? How do we offer our expertise so that we're able to be present with young people to show them a different way? And so I think that as faith communities, that's the question we have to ask. How can we be more present? How can we be more proximate to those that are dealing with the adverse underlying circumstances that can often lead to gun violence? How do we create space to help people to learn the skills that they need to learn in order to mediate conflict? And the other piece that came to mind as I heard Bishop Sue as she was talking in response to the first question was listening. There are some of the underlying, if gun violence is a symptom, then I believe that one of the challenges we face is that this is a way of expressing oneself. This is a way of expressing one's anger that's not being heard. And so how then do we create spaces where individuals can share their pain, can hear their pain and not be judged for the pain that they're carrying and that they're wrestling with? Because they don't necessarily have the tools or they don't say it the way that we might say it. They don't, whatever the case is, we have to be spaces that are able to listen, to hear, and not just assume the needs, but to hear the needs and to hear how we need to show up for our young people and for our communities at large.
So what I hear you saying is basically showing up in the spaces before the tragedy happens, so that you can possibly prevent the tragedy from taking place. Wanted to shift gears slightly and talk about, particularly from the Office of Gun Violence Prevention and from RPD, what specifically are your offices doing to help lower the rate of gun violence in Richmond, and how successful have those efforts been?
All right, I'll start off. So with the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, one of the, I just backtrack, when Mayor Danny Avula came into office, his priorities was looking at, we know, followed the map, the 7 pillars. How do we make a thriving community and thriving neighborhoods, inclusive neighborhoods? But also when he said, hey, we want to develop an Office of Gun Violence Prevention, looking at it from a public health lens, the first order of business is to define the problem. And that is also looking at our data. We went into this probably back in July, leading up to September, and do a preliminary crime analysis. We went back 4 years to look at what are driving crime in the city of Richmond. Who are our offenders, who are victims, the ages, sex, demographics. But the most important piece is how many of those individuals had touch points in our local criminal justice system. And we figured out that the majority of the adult offenders, victims and offenders, had either prior firearm offenses, drug distribution charges, or either aggravated assaults. When we started looking at our juvenile offenders, we noticed that those individuals with the age of 15 and 17 increased their complaints in the juvenile court down at Oliver Hill Court building. And those complaints could range from aggravated malicious wounding all the way up to weapons possession. And so they had to look at, being that Richmond is a recipient of state funds for safer communities, how do we line that money that we've been getting for the past 2 years to address those common drivers of crime in the city of Richmond? Majority of that funding we had put together was for pretty much to deal with out of school time for our youth. But when we start going back and looking at the data for who's committing crimes, the majority of those individuals were over the age of 25. Our common age for offenders was between 27 all the way up to 32. The victims was at 35 and 37. So what services have we put in place to really address that age range? And specifically, if we knew that drivers of crime were arguments and DV related issues that we see common within, within our within the spectrum of violent crime here in the city of Richmond. So we partnered with VCU, did an evaluation of our current efforts, an overall evaluation of those 6 pillars of the gun violence prevention framework, the 62 partners that have been involved with the programs in the city of Richmond for the past 2 years, and look at if that has actually been some sort of outcomes specifically for the target population that they serve. Using that data, we also contracted with the National Institute of Criminal Justice Reform to build out those strategies moving forward. 2027, when the city of Richmond get their new allocation of Safer Communities funding, that funding will be developed based on the strategies as well as dictated by the data that we've seen over the past 4 years. Now, to backtrack, coming out of COVID, we've seen an increase in individuals participating in crime under the age of 18. And we knew at that time we had to do something for our young folk that were participating in crime, but also being victims of homicides. And we saw an increase in 22 and 23 of individuals under 18 that are being killed. Our juvenile detention center for the first time probably had about 10 individuals in there, a 60-bed facility that was charged with homicide. And so with the process of leveraging grant funds, the city of Richmond put in a program called We Matter RVA to look and partner with an intermediary called Next Up RVA to really look at out of school time, resource gaps within our city, specifically in all 9 districts, specifically over those hot spots where we saw crime happening. What we saw is that when we start focusing on social and emotional learning, our individuals under the age of 18 decreased coming into the juvenile system, 38% reduction within the past 3 years. Last year, we only had 3 individuals under the age of 18 to get killed. That's significant a drop compared to where we were before. And we don't want to see any individuals under 18 get killed. But just think about this, from April all the way to October, we didn't have any young person shot or killed. Well, we had, not shot, killed in the city of Richmond, but that investment paid off. When we put in Safer Communities money, we put in a lot of funding for OCWB, Youth Works, and Youth Forward program. That's for youth under the age 18 and those young adults to get jobs throughout the summer, to keep their time occupied during that high priority time when we see individuals getting into trouble. And that paid off. You go to juvenile court today, and I was over there yesterday morning, it's empty. And so our goal is to duplicate what we've done in the past 3 years on the juvenile end and take that same framework and apply it to our adults. And so it's a lot of work to do. We do have a lot of partners that are funded under Safer Communities, but we're always looking for additional partners to move forward. And that is also employing individuals to be a liaison to the Office of Gun Violence Prevention to our 9 districts, focusing on the ones that we see crime happening the most, but to be that liaison to the office to work on crime prevention through environmental design assessments. Whenever something happens within our community, how do we stand up resources for churches and neighborhoods to look at blight, to look at broken windows, whatever it may be that we need to invest in resources to make sure that this community feels safe. All right, I'm passing this to Deputy Chief.
So my response is going to be a little bit different in that the criminal justice system really is the caboose of the train. So once a crime has been committed, we're the person you call at the end of the story. So the preventative side of it is not so much for law enforcement, while we do share a part in it. Our response in many cases is reactive. So I hate to put the question back out to the community, but it's you. It's the community that is the most important thing and is the one thing that will certainly keep you safe. If you need the police in your neighborhood to make you feel safe, then I would say your community is not strong enough. And it's your responsibility to make your community strong enough. If you don't know your neighbor, meet your neighbor. If there is someone in your neighborhood that needs something and you have extra whatever in your garden or whatever that looks like, that responsibility is for you, okay? It's not necessarily for the panel. I could give you a list of programs that the police department is a part of, but it is a drop in the bucket. The one thing standing in between a person finding themselves on the wrong side of a weapon is family and friends and parents on one side, the community on one side, actually on both sides, urging the person not to do it. And that starts at birth. That starts in the crib. So while yes, at the end of the day, we will make the arrest. That's what our responsibility is in the criminal justice system. Lawyers will defend. That's their job in the system. So I don't want to make it seem like we're not doing anything. Like I said, there's a list of programs. But the most important thing that will help a child get out of a dire situation is you, not me.
I do want to piggyback on what Deputy Chief said, and I mentioned it earlier in my introduction, is that when we did our crime problem analysis and we noticed that individuals had touch points in our justice system, we made some changes, and those changes were to look at what did our criminal justice system look like. Deputy Chief just said a lot of that is after the fact. RPD is there before, they're reactionary, but oftentimes, and I've sat in the meetings, and even with Deputy Chief or Chief, and if there's a victim or if there's an offender, they was like, well, we locked that individual up last year. We had some conversations with that family previously 3 or 4 times. And so the question is, what happened when we did lock that individual up? What services were afforded to that individual? And, that's the conversation that don't necessarily been had when it comes to when we find someone who committed an act of violence, what was their trajectory through the juvenile justice system or the criminal justice system? And so we took a deliberate approach to finding out what that looks like, and in my role as the Interim Director of Justice Services, I oversee the Juvenile Detention Center. I see Mr. Baskerville, the former superintendent over there, but we have done a lot of good work in the previous years. But then on the other flip side, we got home electronic monitoring for adults. We got pretrial services for adults, local probation, day reporting center, behavioral health dockets, all these programs. And then when you look at the individuals who went through these programs, we were saying, what are we assessing? Meaning, are we assessing all the criminogenic risk factors that individuals actually address that present throughout that opportunity when they enter the juvenile or the adult court system? Or are we not just taking a deliberate approach and just, painting the picture for everyone, hey, you need community service, you get on electronic monitoring. I'm not going to address competency. I'm just going to look at public safety and accountability. Competency is a big piece in how we change individual behavior, especially thinking errors. So if Greg Hopkins got locked up today for assault and battery and possession of a firearm, the likelihood of me reoffending if I don't have the right services is high. And that is something that we're deliberately looking at in the city of Richmond. That's something that the mayor is very, very adamant about addressing. That if an individual come into our system, we need to address everything, not just behaviors, but transportation, home, schooling, workforce opportunities, because once we put that individual off probation, and if he don't have a housing or a transportation, the likelihood of them reoffending is high. And so when we talk about those social determinants of health and that triangle, we're not doing our job. We just return that individual to a crisis moment, and from crisis they will stay at risk. They will never get to thriving. And that's the goal that we're doing right now.
Can I piggyback on the piggyback?
Please.
So he uses terms like criminogenic factors. That's not how I talk, right? So I'm going to tell you what I see. I have knocked on the door of a mother's house and said, your son was shot. She said, I know, but so was his daddy, and so was I. And then she showed me where she was shot. Okay? That's short for the culture has to change. We have to remove that badge of honor from being a part of, and not necessarily at your own will, your own device, right? I was born into the family I was born into. I didn't have a choice. I love them, okay? I love them very much, but I didn't have a choice. And so we find kids in these predicaments of their own choosing. And I'm telling you, there's nowhere to turn. There's no help coming, not even from the church. So it's beyond, I guess, a bit more than the criminogenic, did I say it again, right? The factor. It is, you have got to understand what these children are looking at every single day. You would be angry too.
So I'd like to just interject a little bit. Richmond Public Schools, our motto is leading with love, right? So with that leading with love, we conduct a survey twice a year. And in that survey, one of our highest marks is where a student this is a student-driven survey. The students feel that there is at least one adult inside of that building that cares for them, that loves them, that wants them to be successful. When they find that one adult in that building, they feel a sense of safety. But they have to be at school in order to feel that sense of safety. When you're safe, that allows your brain to calm down. That gives us the opportunity to think. That gives us the opportunity to learn. But learning just doesn't come from academics. The learning also comes from living skills or social and emotional learning. Once they're inside of the school, we have the opportunity to work on that conflict resolution. We have the opportunity to work on communication skills. We have the opportunity to work on problem-solving skills, relationships. Between the times of 7:30 in the morning and about 4:30 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the children are with us so that we are able to help them move forward with understanding some of the things that are going on in your community are not what civil responsibility looks like. So inside of the school, we are able to help them get that supports that they need that looks a little different than what their reality is at home. But if we continue it and continue to work as young as pre-K all the way up through their senior year, repetition tends to be the best mode of learning. So with that repetition, it really gets in. And seeing a student go from someone that is having some behavior challenges, but we are able to give them the mental health supports that they need from some of our school counselors or social workers, or even some of our outside partners, whether it's a faith-based community, or whether communities in schools, or one of the mental health programs that we are connected to. That allows the student to actually see something different. And when you see something different, that makes you want to do better.
So let's talk about that for one moment, though, because you used the phrase a few times, when they're with us, when they come to school, when they're in the building, that type of thing. Is there an issue with kids not making it to school on a regular basis? Is attendance is a problem? Does that play into this at all?
School has to be a cultural thing inside of your household. And some families have been disenfranchised by the schools. When we talk about coming to school, the only way that we can help you is if you are inside of the school. So being able to break down some of those barriers, talk to those parents directly, knock on a door, say, hey, listen, notice your student hasn't been at school for a little while. What can we do to help you get your student to school? You know, the idea is that if we can break down those barriers and tear down some of those negative connotations about school, then they will come. And when they're there, like I said, we say they're ours because they are our children. Because at the end of the day, these are the same children that are running around, playing, having fun, but having to change their lives when someone is shot inside of their family. So.
Many RPS schools, as well as schools in our area, have weapons detectors at the doors where students have to go through them, staff members have to go through them before being allowed into the schools. Some would say that creates an environment that's a little too regulated. Is that part and parcel to this idea of reducing gun violence as well?
You know, it's interesting. I work a lot inside of the community. And I had a young man that was attending a particular high school in the East End, and he ended up getting in a little trouble. So he had a foster family adopt him, and he ended up going out to another side of Henrico County, West End. And the first thing I said, well, how do you like your new school? He was like, Mr. Cooper, I don't feel safe. They don't have the metal detectors. They don't have the people wanding us down because people bring everything to school. So it depends on the perspective and the lens that you're looking from. You know, we're looking at it from safety. Safety first, no matter what. That's why we do incorporate the security, safety and security under the wellness team. That's why we do encourage clear book bags. And that's why we do encourage students to say something through various media outlets that we support throughout the district.
And this is for anyone on the panel who would like to answer. We touched on it a little bit earlier, but what is the impact? How important is it for legislators to get involved in this process, for laws to be changed, for our folks at the Capitol to get involved and make an impact on gun violence?
It's incredibly important, and I think, you know, let's talk about the reality of oppression and the reality of politicians and gun manufacturers, and I'm going to name the NRA, as having billions of dollars. And that has rested on these communities, mostly who don't have enough. And so you have legislators who are generally millionaires, generally of great means, relying on other groups to get elected, and their victims continue to be victims. So I think, and Marvin is part of a group, what we look at is the only thing now that seems to speak to legislators is critical mass. And so we need all faith communities, all people who are concerned about this to come together and to speak out and say enough is enough. That you have the means to regulate, you have the means to limit, you have the means to help our communities be safer, but it's got to happen. And the only thing that helps is a critical mass of people to come and say, if you do not help our communities, if you do not quit victimizing all these people, we will vote you out of office. Because that seems to be the only currency these days. And I'll let Marvin take it from there.
Well, but before you do, you use some strong language there, victimizing our communities. Are you saying that our lawmakers are victimizing our communities?
I'm saying every moment they turn a blind eye, every moment they take huge lobbying money, every time they don't give money for mental health and for helping our communities and to our schools and to education, yes, they are depriving people, and every time they make violence a game, it hurts us. So when we turn war into a video game, when we turn all of our children loose, I wish I had grown up in a time where I didn't have to see a murder. But I can turn on the TV and see 50 in 1 hour. So there's a huge problem here. And there's a lot of silence and a lot of inaction and a lot of turning a blind eye from legislators. because they're misplaced. The priorities are misplaced.
So I'm going to raise this notion of critical mass. As Bishop Sue mentioned, I'm part of the leadership of an organization called RISC, and we have 30 plus congregations that gather together with this one notion in mind, that we recognize that those who are in decision-making positions, they will be influenced by one of two things: organized money or organized people, right? And oftentimes what happens is, as Bishop Sue shared, is that the organized money wins out. It's the money that makes the decision, that makes the laws. And what ends up happening is the decisions that are being made, the legislation that is being passed or not being passed, I'll say it very plainly, it's actually immoral. It goes against, in our faith traditions, thinking about the value of human life. When I, as a Christian pastor, look at any individual, I see the image of God in each person, right? It devalues that. It puts a price on that. It puts a price on those communities. And so through our work in RISC, our thing is about how do we organize the most people possible to help hold those public officials accountable. And I think this is a model that that has had, it takes time, it takes oftentimes years for some of these things, but even some of the progress that we see happening in our city in various areas in this particular area, even with gun violence, has happened in part because of the group of people coming together and saying, hey, this is what we need for our community. And I think that there are other organizations, even on the state level and state and federal level, that could use more faith community support. We talked about how faith communities can show up, how the community can show up. Yes, we need to be present to hear the stories. We need to be present in our communities, but we also need to be present at the General Assembly. We need to be present at City Hall. We need to be present on Capitol Hill in D.C., right? And so there are organizations in Virginia, Interfaith Center for Public Policy, that is doing this work and supporting legislation that honors the sanctity of life and the image of God. It is organizations like the Commonwealth Institute for Fiscal Analysis that's looking at what's happening and legislating and lobbying and constantly looking for the support of the community, because they're often representing Black and brown communities, oppressed communities, minority communities, Latino communities, and they're going to the legislators and they're building relationship with legislators and saying, hey, this is what we need. This is what we need to have happen so that our communities can move from surviving to thriving and flourishing, which should be the goal and the desire for all of us. But oftentimes what I believe I see, in some of the legislation that it gets passed, in some of our legislators and how they move and the decisions they make, that's not the goal. The goal isn't for everybody to be better. It's only for a few folks to get what they need at the expense of others. And I just believe, as one who's a follower of Jesus Christ, I believe that we serve a God of abundance, that there is enough for everybody. There's enough for everybody to survive, to do more than survive, but to thrive. There's enough for all of us to live healthy lives, to live into our purpose, to live into what it is that we have been created to do. And so I would encourage us, all of us that are here today. RISC is one organization. Check out Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy, TCI. Let's do the research, and let's also be informed, because I think that's another challenge too, community-wide. We're not informed on what's actually going on. Don't take this personal, what I'm about to say.
No, because folks are not watching 8 News, I understand.
We have to make sure that we're doing our part to know the actual thing. And this is not a shot at media or anything like that, but we have to make sure that we're doing our research. Yes, we hear the news story, but the news is only 20-some minutes. And there's only so much that can be shared in a particular news story. So we have to do some due diligence. We have to do some reading and some digging on our own, or finding out and asking the questions that need to be asked so that we can be more knowledgeable as we go to the polls, more knowledgeable as we have conversations in our community. You know, I'm sorry, I'm riffing.
Go ahead on, Reverend.
We find a lot of time to have a lot of conversation on social media and other spaces about a lot of things that don't significantly impact our lives. And we have to shift to having more conversation about the things that actually gonna help us to thrive and survive and to grow in our communities, and our young people and our elders to be able to feel safe in their communities, to be able to live their best lives, so that they can again experience the thriving and the flourishing that I believe that we're all called to experience. Okay, I'm done.
You got something you want to say? You look like you're itching to say something. Okay. You just named a lot of organizations, and I've heard a lot of things that contribute to solutions where this problem of gun violence is concerned. We've got police, you're saying you're kind of on the tail end, the caboose, Office of Gun Violence Prevention, the faith community. Somebody tell me, what are some of the challenges that exist in bringing all of these pieces together and having them operate in an interwoven manner? What is the challenge there? Because until that happens, you'll have all these fragments and pieces, but folks won't be working in a cohesive way towards the same end. You understand what I'm saying? So whoever wants to address that, feel free.
I'll go first. Pastor Gilliam said something a few minutes ago about proximity and, what was it, proximity and presence? Yeah, and so that is key, man. I mean, proximity, I always talk about proximity and alignment. When I first stepped in this role in July, prior to that, I worked at DCJS, Department of Criminal Justice Service, for 6 years. And I work with a lot of localities across the Commonwealth employing, different strategies to address gun violence. And the biggest hurdle that they have was getting out their own way. There were so many silos within different parts of communities where you had people that didn't want to mess with the local government. They didn't like the police. The faith leaders don't want to do their own thing. And then we had nonprofits that say, we're going to do it our way. And it's sort of hard to leverage that community collaboration when we don't break those silos down. And the best way to do it is what we do here in the city of Richmond. We do have a gun violence prevention steering committee. I always open the door. They meet every Tuesday, the first Tuesday every month. Anybody's welcome to come. That way we're being more transparent about how we spend our money towards strategies, how we build appropriate strategies to address either who it is that we're targeting. But at the same time, we want to do community initiatives like spring break. We got a whole events happening the whole spring break because we want to occupy everybody's time. Everybody's welcome to join in. I got real life program, trauma healing response program. We got next up RVA 13 partners, Richmond Parks and Recreation. We also got the Armstrong Creighton reunion, class reunion team putting together a camp. So it's like, if we don't get an opportunity to be transparent on a local level, to invite folks like yourself to come in and participate, then all we're doing is shutting the door to reality that if we're not really interested in solving the problem. And so we have to be able to just engage the folks that we like and the folks we don't like. That's the biggest issue. And then I've seen folks who say, especially in other cities, that, hey, we're not working with them because they didn't return a call, or we didn't get funded last year by this organization. And it creates another hurdle for accessing to people who really need services.
Me? I was going to say, I don't actually have the answer. I was simply going to say, I know that we are the problem and we are also the solution. So it requires everyone pulling in the same direction. How that works, I pray that God could make it, could make it happen, but I feel like God is looking at us because we have all the tools necessary to make that happen. We just have to humble ourselves to some degree and help. What that help looks like for you may not be the same for me. I'm not a minister, I'm not a pastor, I'm a police officer. So I'm helping in that vein, and I am giving it everything that I have. That's what we all have to do. We have to be committed to changing it, changing us, changing all of us, so that we all are looking in the same direction. I pray that there is enough. I pray that there is enough, but there certainly will never be enough if everyone is just fighting over the bits and the scraps of what they can take back into their home and keep safely in that nest. So I don't have the answer. I just know it's everybody in this room.
It's interesting that you would say that we are the problem and the solution, the ability to be both simultaneously. We do have a couple of questions that we've gotten from the audience, and thank you very much to those of you who submitted questions who are in the audience. And so I'll ask, and anyone who wants to answer can feel free to do so. Someone wants to know about if you want to give away, this is Allison Freeman asking this question, if people want to give away a firearm they don't want, is there a place in RVA to do that?
So if there is a firearm in your home, you can just call police department, the non-emergency number. In Henrico, I believe it's 510-5000. Ours is 646-6100. I hope I gave the right number for us. I gave you the number for Henrico. Right now, the non-emergency number. But an officer will come and take the weapon. Generally, we will destroy it. So it's not on the streets. So it's really very, very easy. Once or twice a year, we do the gun drive, what is it called? Buyback. And you just have to keep your ears out for it, where if you'd like to turn in a working firearm, you can get up to a $200 gift certificate. But that is based off of grant funds or nonprofit funds that are given to us that allow us to do it. And we typically do it about once or twice a year. But just call the officer, they'll come and take the weapon for you.
Marla Crawford asks, how can school programs address youth violence? And Mr. Cooper, you may have touched on this earlier. Is there anything you'd like to expound where that's concerned? How can school programs address youth violence?
Well, we talked about at least getting the students to school, right? And inside of this school, we offer various programs that are social emotionally based. But that's also an opportunity for students to look at what civil behavior looks like. And as we continue to work with various programs such as Second Step that we utilize, or Bounce Back, or we create what is called community building circles for each one of our students to start their days off, we also need funding to support these programs and support the people that are leading those programs. We have a group of individuals called Student Sports Specialists who are there to mitigate any of the violence within the schools. Primarily they're in the secondary part of education, 6 through 12. But their jobs are very important because they help us limit the amount of negative interactions going on within the school or getting ahead of it. Big thing here in the city, we like to be proactive. We really want to be proactive in our approach, and being able to provide programs K through 5, more specifically with that social emotional piece. I'm looking for 6 through 8 for more exploratory piece, where students are getting beyond those 4 blocks that they're used to. And then 9 through 12, more of internships or programs that can help them with learning a skill or a trade so that they can get money. A lot of times our students are looking for attention, but the attention that they are used to getting is based off of negativity. We try to always promote positivity and encouragement and like I said before, we like to lead with love and want every kid to have a sense of belonging when they're inside the schools.
What can I, as just an average citizen, not in political office, not on the police force, not someone with any particular position, just John Q. Public, what can I do to help combat this problem of gun violence in the city of Richmond and the surrounding Richmond area?
I think one of the key words that I've heard, throughout our time tonight, one of the things that I continue to hear is about relationship. Who is the young person, who is the young adult that you've worked to build relationship with? As Mr. Cooper mentioned, in the school system, within the school building, it is recognized that, if a young person has one adult in the building that cares about them, that they know cares about them, that improves their chances for success. And I think if we were to extrapolate that to the wider community, who is the young person? Who are the young people? Who are the individuals that you have relationship with? It doesn't have to be 1,000, it doesn't have to be 50. You start with the kid that lives next door to you, with the young adult that lives around the corner that you see at the store, and taking an interest, like just seeing them as a person with potential, like recognizing that if they're alive, they must have a dream about something. And how then can I encourage them? And it's going to be, and be open to the fact that it may be challenging at first. That oftentimes we can be reticent and hesitant to let people in, but to be consistent and persistent with showing up and building relationship in that way. And that can be done in neighborhood, that can be done through connecting with the numerous organizations that are working with young people and young adults across the city. But I think that's where it begins, I think, for me, when I think about that question. As an individual, what do I do? Who can I go build a relationship with? Who can I get to know?
I think mentoring, and that's pretty much what you alluded to. Mentoring is really important. But sometimes we get mentors that are discouraged about how a particular individual utilizes some words that are very colorful, or their behaviors are a little bit different. But isn't that the job of a mentor? To kind of coach them and teach them and guide them? Sounds like somebody else I know that coached and taught and guided some 12 other people before, and they were not the best individuals, but guess what? They followed the path, correct? So really that mentorship, and I'm not talking about a one-off. I'm talking about something that's sustainable. That's something that you follow them, right? It has to be consistent. It has to, and you have to invest time and energy, and occasionally finances. But as we know, children just really want time and attention. And if we can catch them early, and even if the ones that you can't catch early, because it's really easy to mentor and be around someone between the ages of 5 and maybe 12. But it's the 13 through 17, 13 through 19 who really need that positive leadership from someone.
And if you don't feel comfortable mentoring, take care of your own. I mean, parent. If you don't want to go out and meet strange new people, I get it. But at the very least, pay attention to the ones in your house.
Deputy Chief, did you say parent?
What
She
I
said
said.
parents.
I said parent. That's what I said, okay? I'm not asking you to look after everybody else's child. I'm asking you to look after your child. Sometimes I think we feel like, and my friend Willis, I've heard him say that the kids are telling the parents what they're gonna do. I pay for the Wi-Fi. I pay for the cell phone. I pay for all of these things. We have to reassert some control. And if you need, I will come to your house and teach you how to.
I got that one covered, Deputy Chief.
Okay, I will personally come to your house and show you the tricks and the trades of raising, you know, I have just boys, okay? But just pay attention to the ones that belong to you, okay? And I mean your cousins, your nieces, your nephews, your grandchildren, the ones that are in your circle. I promise you that is halfway there. If you don't know your child's favorite music artist, if you haven't been in your child's room to conduct a search warrant, and it's completely legal, okay? It's completely legal to do that, okay? You are not invading their privacy. Again, I paid for it. If you are not doing those things to ensure that your child or the ones you are responsible for are doing the things that you taught them, then you are leaving it to somebody else to teach them the things that you have missed, okay? So if you don't want a mentor, if you're not a part of a church, if you're not talking to everybody in the neighborhood when you walk, fine, just look in your child's book bag. Look in your child's phone. You can do this. Find out their friends' names, their real names, not the names that they call them. These are the things that I remember. I know it's old-fashioned because I'm old, but it works. It works. It works. Like Dawn dishwashing liquid. It works.
I want to add something to the parent, and that's absolutely correct, and I totally agree with that. We got to take care of the ones that's in our house. And I want to actually add to that. Not only us thinking about teaching our young people, but letting our kids teach us. Giving them. I came across an article or a YouTube video or something. And it was some expert talking about parenting, but one thing that he said in the video that has really stuck with me is I consider raising my own. I have 3 kids myself. Is 20 minutes. He didn't even say a day. I think he said 20 minutes a week of uninterrupted, scheduled time where you're not necessarily telling them what to do, where you're not necessarily, giving instruction, where you are just building a relationship. It seems like a small investment, but it really is a huge investment in building trust with your children. And so I would just encourage us as parents to, and it's hard because we're thinking about a lot of things, right? And as I reflect, I was a teacher myself in Richmond Public Schools and had this conversation and always had the question was like, man, why do parents not showing up to PTA meetings, this, that, and the third? But I also had to learn that there are parents that are working 2 and 3 and 4 jobs trying to make the ends meet. And yes, putting a roof over our child's head, making sure that their needs are provided for is very important, but we can't forget the relationship piece of that. And I've seen parents that they don't show up to the PTA meeting, but they on it with their kids. So the jobs aren't necessarily an excuse for us not to do the other part and to build a relationship with our young people. That's a really important piece.
Finally, tonight, I had the opportunity some years ago to interview Reverend Joseph Lowry. You may be familiar with that name, and he said something that has stuck with me for a number of years. He said, words are great, talk is great, but in the morning, do words turn into deeds that meet needs? If each of you would spend about 20 seconds, if there's only one thing that everyone in this sanctuary could walk away with that you've said tonight, what would you want someone in this room to walk away with from you? I'll start with you, Mr. Hopkins.
It's a tough one. When we talk about gun violence, three things are most common: people, places, and opportunity. If we look at the last 3 homicides here in the city of Richmond, you'll notice certain common themes: where individuals come from, where the homicides take place, and the opportunity that permit that homicide to occur. Us individuals, as pastors, school educators, law enforcement, even city worker like myself, we have a hard job, and that is to really kind of work together to come up with strategies that work. Our ask for you all is that continue to do your thing, show up, just like you show up tonight. T-shirt, mom's T-shirt. Mr. Willis will call me every day. He's not getting a dime from the city of Richmond, but he's volunteering his time just to show up in every way he can fit to make sure Greg Hopkins is 11 o'clock at night. Willis gonna call me. But just to be engaging, to say, hey, look, we commemorate, we applaud everyone for being here. But the biggest thing I take away from this is that I just want folks to show up, help us out, pick us up when we getting beat up, but at the same time, if we know that, hey, we can be a little bit better and more intentional, don't be afraid to call it out. So that's all I'm gonna take away from, my takeaway from this, and then my charge to you all is to show up, but hold us accountable.
So I would say, really be present and do not look away, right? When you see something and you can do something to help, then help. And it doesn't have to be, a mountain you have to move. That may not be your purpose. It could be just the smallest things that could help. And again, pay attention to your own family and your own children, your brothers and your sisters. Check on people to make sure they're okay. But that's all I have.
All right. Let's be proactive in supporting our communities, whether they look like us or not. Intervening limits harm, but you can always have, but you can't have a bias as to whether you want to talk to authorities or not. And let's stop making abnormal behavior normal behavior, right?
Build relationships. Build relationships in your home, throughout the community. People who are like you and people who are not like you. This has already been said. Presence and proximity are important. If we are the community, and we don't want to, and I don't think any of us want to talk to you like you are the community. Like, we are the community. This is ours, and so we have to be partners in co-creating the city that we want to see. And so step into that process of co-creating on whatever level, building relationships, showing up to the various means for advocacy and legislation, and supporting our young people and creating a safer Richmond.
Thanks, Marvin. I think you've got the first step. You're here. And I think that the biggest thing to do is to continue the conversation. You mentioned earlier, why are we polarized? Because we're carefully programmed to be polarized. That's the name of the game these days. So I would beg all of you, let's move to the middle. Because on this conversation, one extreme says they want to take all your guns away. And the other extreme says that every gun, you have no way to limit any of this. I would say let's move to the middle and have some real discussions about what makes sense and how can we help our legislators see that it makes sense not just to address this issue in a rational way, but to address the underlying causes. And to really question the presumptions. 72% of the people in the United States don't own a gun. So you can live without a gun. I've lived my whole life without a gun, but I also own my privilege. So let's talk about how do we help people who don't feel safe, because every human being deserves to feel safe. And so let's talk about in our community who isn't safe, who doesn't feel safe, why don't they feel safe, and work toward that. But if we could just move to the middle, I would love if the Supreme Court would say, we're going to go to original intent and you all get a musket, right? You all get a musket. I can't for 1 minute think our founding fathers would look at the weapons, the military weapons on our streets and go, yeah, that's great, let's do that. But let's get a critical mass and continue the conversation and move to the middle and talk about the underlying issues, but also how can we just do sane things that get rid of bump stocks and automatic weapons and military-style weapons on our streets. That doesn't make any of us safe. And I would go, and this is my faith background speaking, but let's question the premise that if I have a gun, I'm secure. Because a lot of times the guns in our houses that we think are keeping us secure, get used on our children, get used enraged by our teenagers. And so, but y'all are here. I am so grateful to see all of you. Bring 10 people or more each time. Let's move to the middle and let's keep the conversation going.
I think that if we were to sum up what has been said in the closing statements here tonight, it would be to show up. Whatever that means to you, show up. In your neighborhood, in your church, in your house, on your job. How you show up is how you show up, and no one can do it just like you, but we need you to do it. Show up. Use your voice. That is how we make a difference. I'd like for you to put your hands together and thank all of our panelists here tonight. And now put your hands together for yourselves for showing up here tonight. And lastly, Deputy Chief, I want to thank you for giving me the permission to search my children's room, knowing that if they call you, I will not be arrested. Pastor Moon.
Thank you all so much. And will you thank our panel once again for such a great job here this night? It has been such a gift for you to give us your time and your expertise, and we are grateful and humbled at your time here with us tonight. And we also say thanks to Eric Phillips for his great job working here with us tonight. We want you all to know that on your way out, if you would like, we still have some food over here in our what we call our Welcome Center. Just head on out. You can find some refreshment there. We would love to have you if you'd like to have more conversation and gather together. As we are dismissed, let me offer a closing word of prayer. Lord God, you have been so good to us to gather this night. We have heard a good, encouraging, and challenging word from all those gathered here. And we are reminded this night of the words of Jeremiah as he called the people to pray for the prosperity and peace of the city. It is our prayer that you would enable us to do that you would hear our prayer for the peace of this city. As we go from this place, convict us of what we can do instead of what we cannot, and enable us to have a vision of hope that lies not only in you, but in the work that we shall do. For we are thankful for this time together as we go through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you all so much. Go in peace.